Alright, section 1.3 was about fraction basics, and this was the first section of our group fraction project, but I just wanted to give you this video just in case you needed a little bit extra from what your classmates gave you about this information. So the first section is just about simplifying fractions. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but the most important thing to remember is when you have a fraction, pretty much every fraction problem that you have, the last step you're going to do is to simplify it. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to look and see what number can I divide by both the top, the numerator, and the denominator. What can I divide by both of those to make this fraction smaller? So if you are having a hard time knowing what number, you can list your factors. So I'm going to show you one example of that here. So my factors of 8, I can do 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and that's pretty much it. My factors of 12 are going to be 1 and 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. So I'm going to look and see what is the greatest factor I can divide by both of those. And if you couldn't see it ahead of time, you'll see right here that the biggest number you can divide by 8 and 12 is 4. So that's the factor you're going to be dividing both of these numbers by. So we're going to divide this by 4. And we're going to divide this by 4. So that's going to give you 2 in the numerator and 3 in the denominator. So these fractions are equivalent. They're exactly the same fraction. This is just simplified. So for example, if you're cooking and the recipe calls for 8/12 of a cup of flour, if all you have is a 2/3 of a cup, that's exactly the same. So that's an example of simplifying fractions. Let's just do one more here. Let's do example number 4. So if you have 2 negatives, right away you should know from our multiplication rules, 2 negatives make a positive when you're dividing. So right away we should know that our answer is going to be positive. So these cancel each other out. Okay? And then you can either list out your factors just like we did up here, or maybe you can see that there's a certain number you can divide by both of them. So 21 and 49, those are both famous numbers for 7. So I'm going to divide the top by 7 and the bottom by 7. So we're going to get 3 and 7 on the bottom. And like we said, it's going to be a positive number. So important thing to remember too is, let's say you pick the wrong factor. Let's say we picked, like for this one maybe, if we picked 2 instead of 4, we didn't pick the greatest factor, we would get, let's say we picked 2, we would get 4 out of 6. You should notice right now that I can keep going with this fraction. I can keep dividing it by 2. So if you mess up and you don't pick the biggest factor, it's okay. You just got to keep simplifying it until you can't simplify anymore. So that's simplifying fractions in a nutshell. Let's move on to the next part, which was our conversions. So the first thing is converting our improper fractions into mixed numbers. So how we're going to do that is we're going to divide the bottom number by the top number. So how many times can 3 fit into 10? So if I do 10 divided by 3, it only is going to fit in 3 times without going over. So that's going to be our whole number. So 3 times 3, that only gives us 9. So that means I have 1 left over to get to 10. Okay, and then your denominator is just going to stay exactly the same. So in a mixed number, you should have a whole number and then a proper fraction here. Let's try another one here. So 47. So how many times does 5 fit into 47 without going over? So I know I can do 5 times. Let's try 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25, so I know it's got to be bigger than that. So let's try 5 times 8. 5 times 8 is 40. Can go a little bit more. 5 times 9 is 45. If I do 5 times 10, I go over. So that's another way to do it. So it goes in 9 times evenly. So we said 9 times 5 is 45. So that would mean I have 2 left over before getting to 47. and then my denominator is going to stay the same. So that's how you change from a improper to a mixed number. And then let's look at the other way around, so a mixed number into an improper fraction, which I think is a little bit simpler. So here we're going to take, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this denominator and multiply it by the whole number. So 5 times 4 is 20, and then we're going to add the numerator. So let's put this here. So times and then add. So 5 times 4 is 20, plus 3 is 23, and that's going to become our numerator for the improper fraction. And then this is the easy part. You're just going to keep that denominator the same. So these fractions are exactly the same, except this is a mixed number and this is an improper. Let's try this one here because it's got that negative. So you're going to do the same thing, except you're going to ignore this negative for right now. Pretend it's not there. We're going to deal with that at the end. So 7 times 3 is 21, plus 2, again, we've got 23. And then your denominator stays the same. And then this negative is going to come at the end. You're just going to add that to your answer. So that's your basic of fractions if you needed a little bit of guidance with that. And we're going to move on to the next one.